Welcome to Chez, Genèse, the place of new beginnings. My name is Catherine Hubert, and I founded and own a French-inspired cafe where, as a team, we are on a mission to change the way our world views and employs adults with disabilities. Our restaurant was born and is based in Greensboro, North Carolina, and that's where we practice and teach our mission and model. This is our channel where we dive in deep to who we are, what we do, and why we do it. Our hope is that this content is empowering to disabled and non-disabled humans alike, and that no matter what perspective you are coming from, whether that's employer, employee, parent, friend, or Chez Genèse fan, you feel welcomed, you learn something new, and you walk away with a deeper appreciation and understanding of humanity. Hi everybody, welcome back to our channel. I'm excited to have you here today. We are going to do something that we haven't really done before, which is take a minute and actually have some conversation around something that is happening in kind of the entertainment industry at the moment, a pop culture, not totally live time, because this is going to be a little bit delayed by the time you see this, but in real-ish time, response to something that is happening in the entertainment and pop culture industry, since it is relevant to a lot of the things that we talk about here in terms of disability narratives and bias and how disability is portrayed in the media. And that is, we are going to talk about the comedy special that comedian Matt Rife put out on Netflix, or that Netflix put out on his behalf a few weeks ago. So there has been a good amount of dialogue and conversation that has happened on the internet in terms to an opening joke that he made about domestic violence. So if you are not familiar with this, there are a lot of just kind of little sound-bitey clips and articles that have been written about it. You can Google Matt Rife Netflix special and check those out. We'll drop them down in the link below, like in our notes below. But essentially opened up his special by making a joke, comments about a waitress with a black eye. Why is she not back in the kitchen so that she doesn't have to be up front where people could see her with her black eye? And then saying, but probably if she was a good cook, she wouldn't have the black eye in the first place. Terrible joke all the way around. There's a lot of commentary just in terms of the toxic masculinity, the misogyny that's being represented, making light of or trying to poke fun at something that is reality in the lives of women far too often. There's a whole lot of different narratives and conversations that are happening around that topic. That in and of itself caught my attention because I'm a woman and I care about humans and I care about women. So I kind of dug into it a little bit because that initially caught my attention, and then it further caught my attention and got me impassioned because he later issued an apology, again, apology in quotation marks here, on his Instagram story, saying something to the effect of, you know, to anyone who's been offended by my special or by some of my jokes, you know, click here for my response or apology or something like that. We're going to click so you can see more specifics because I'm paraphrasing a lot of this. But then once you click to the link led to a page titled Special Needs Helmets, and then was a shopping site for protective headwear for people with disabilities. So we're going to talk about that because as if that was like, if the joke wasn't bad enough, and then to really just go in deeper. And I think it's really pricked my attention and curiosity because it hits two areas that are of personal interest to me. But in digging into it, I was like, what exactly are you trying to communicate here? Like, there's some obvious themes, but also some that maybe are a little bit more subtle. And that's what I want to dig into today, because all of that, the obvious and the subtle, do play such an important role in how we perceive the world. And that's where media and entertainment really hold a lot of weight and value in our culture today, in terms of how they shape a lot of the narratives or the beliefs, and they can do that in a way that feels very subconscious to us still. Some of this feels very overt, but in general, media and entertainment can very subconsciously impact and affect the way that we perceive things in our world. We're going to dig into that. So, kind of going back to, here's the joke about domestic violence. The response to that then is this link to protective headwear for people with disabilities, but labeled as special needs helmets. I tried to go back and find that link in particular because I wanted to see what business was still labeling this product as special needs helmets, because I feel like that is also problematic, and that's not connected to the comedian necessarily. That's the business. But what points was Matt Rife potentially trying to make? What are we taking from that as an audience? And were there other messages that were being communicated here? I think that the answer to that last one is yes. And so we're going to talk about that. But my initial thought when I saw that was, I was like, I'm missing something. Where's the connection? Is what you're communicating here that someone who has experienced domestic abuse or violence is in need of this product? Like, are you trying to tie a thread between this and that? And then I was like, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So in kind of processing it out loud with some people, it's like, no, maybe the point there was, if you're offended by my material, then you're so sensitive that you fall into this category of someone who's disabled and needs to wear a helmet, essentially. So like, oh, sorry, you got your feelings hurt. That means you're, and putting someone into this othering category that needs to be protected, essentially. It's your fault. It's your problem. You're too sensitive. I think all of those things could be true and still point to a lot of bias that people hold around disabilities, which is that if someone's too sensitive, if they get easily offended, if they're not able to take a joke, then that must mean that you are disabled. It could be drawing a comparison there, which are biases or beliefs that people do hold that are incorrect and harmful. But in doing some deeper digging, I found that he actually had a joke in his Netflix special that is not being talked about so much, at least not to the degree that the domestic violence joke was, but that deals with disability. And I'm not going to repeat it word for word because it was crass enough that I would like to not repeat it word for word. But the joke essentially starts with him saying that when he was in high school, there was another kid in his high school who had a disability. Through a series of inappropriate comments, it becomes clear that this student had Down syndrome. Basically describes, went to high school with a student who had a disability, but also had a really huge penis. And then kind of goes through a series of descriptions and jokes about that, and ultimately ends with essentially the student with Down syndrome, it should be his girlfriend who wears the special need helmet in order to protect herself during sex. That's kind of the gist of it. So I was like, oh, this link, this apology that you put is offensive on multiple levels, and it's a callback to another joke that was really poorly placed. So what do we do with all of this information? And what biases are present in all of that? And how does this comedy special and the way that people have been reacting to it show where our culture still is in terms of disability and disability rights? Okay, we're going to start with culturally, what does this teach us about where our world is at in terms of disability rights? I think that the way that the world and the internet has reacted to this content shows that we are becoming, as a whole, more intolerant of misogyny, toxic masculinity, certainly in favor of us becoming more intolerant and just completely intolerant of those things. So that I think is a positive. I think it does show that there is still a lot of times where disrespect towards disabled humans still goes largely unnoticed by the general population, or if it is noticed, there's maybe not a total understanding of why that content or that disrespect is disrespectful or why it feels off to us. I think it can be easy to see something like that and be like, ooh, I don't like that, that doesn't feel good, but not necessarily be able to pinpoint exactly why. So what does this actually teach us? I want to walk us through what are some of those things that feel off and why are they off base. A lot of this content, both the joke about someone with a disability, the link to the special needs helmets, implies that a person with a disability is less fortunate, they are less than. In his joke referencing the student that he went to high school with who had Down syndrome, he says that he has a disability, but he was blessed with a large penis. The way that that joke ran seems to imply that having the disability is the curse, but don't worry because he was blessed in another area, which I know is jargon that people use when talking about someone being well endowed in the first place. So that's not totally new, but the juxtaposition of he was disabled, but he was blessed, I think furthers the bias and that stereotype that a lot of people with disabilities are less fortunate in many areas of life, but oftentimes still have a gifting or a superpower or something that makes them special in another area. So this was maybe a more crude way of creating that difference, but I think it still falls into the same category. He also, Matt Rife, when he was describing that he had a disabled classmate, said he was special needs, which we've talked about here before on our video that was, is it still okay to use the term special needs, which if you haven't seen that one, that would be a good one to watch after this one because we're dealing with a lot of that commentary. But one of the things that we mentioned in that video is that some people still prefer to identify as saying that they have special needs instead of saying that they have a disability. We as a whole are pro using the term disability and like disabled, non-disabled, person with a disability, person without a disability, to neutralize and destigmatize the word. But if a disabled person has the preference of using special needs as a term to describe something that they have or possess, then that is certainly within their willpower and they have the freedom to do that, and we want to be respectful. However, it is not appropriate or respectful to use special needs as a descriptor of someone. So saying so-and-so has special needs versus so-and-so is special needs. There's a tonal difference there. There's a respect difference. So that was something else to point out. And then again, this idea that a person with a disability needs protecting, they are helpless, they are powerless. Those themes carried on not only throughout the joke that he made about his classmate, but then in the link, the apology link, which we'll kind of circle back to here at the end, showing, I think, if I'm connecting all of the dots, and it's possible that I'm missing some or that I'm drawing more, I'm giving, this comedian more credit than what he is due. But as I thought it through more, I was like, I think that there, one, is the stereotype or the prejudice that someone with a disability needs protecting is too sensitive. But if you're drawing that conclusion that the person who is offended by his joke about domestic violence takes on the role or the identity of a disabled person who needs protecting, then I think it's fair to say that he's also drawing a comparison or an analogy that he is in the position of someone who's too much man, and therefore the person receiving what he has to give needs protection. Based on the joke, the callback, the way that it all played out, I was like, I think that that may be the broader base of what's happening it's dirty all the way around. The things that I think are important for us to take away from that are humor can be used, I think, in really powerful ways. And power can be both positive and negative. I think humor can break down a lot of barriers. It can educate us around content that is maybe more challenging to receive. I've seen comedians use humor really well to approach subjects and to broaden people's perspectives or thinking in ways that just a lecture or a talk or an article would not have. But humor can also be used to unfairly perpetuate stereotypes and stigmas that we already hold as a society and just exploit them, which I think is what was happening here. We're talking about it because it's something that's culturally relevant. It also is relevant to the things that we talk about on this channel a lot. My hope is that we continue to grow, that we become intolerant of any kind of hatred or bias towards humanity in general, especially when you're talking about other minority groups. So in this case, it was women and people with disabilities. But paying attention to where those biases are coming out and feeling the freedom to not only say, that's not funny to me, and then following that up with, and this is why. And it doesn't make you too sensitive. It doesn't make you in need of protection. It's instead standing up for the things that affect and impact you. And that's a beautiful part of being a human, is being impacted and affected by the things around us. So that's it for today. Comments or questions, please drop them below, and we'll see you next week.